Really thank you to all the panelists. It was such an enlightening discussion and engaging discussion. Now we'll move into session 2, energy efficiency and sustainability in shipping. First, we have with us Demetris Lemesianos, HSQE and Sustainability Manager at Island Oil Holdings Limited, presenting on the uptake of alternative fuels versus meeting the target. Please welcome Demetris.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm Demetris Lemesianos, HSQE and Sustainability Manager of Island Oil Holdings. A little bit about us. Island Oil is a diverse group of companies. We primarily deal with the supply and trading of marine fuel oils and lubricants. We have been established since 1992, and we have offices in Cyprus, Israel, Romania, Greece, the UK, Singapore, Hong Kong, and South Korea. Among our latest developments is the trading of biofuels that has been certified by SEC and the establishment of an EU allowances trading desk for compliance of the shipping industry with ETS. Today's presentation is about the uptake of alternative fuels and if today, as we stand today, the shipping industry will meet its targets. Going back to a bit of how we ended up and what is the work done at the IMO, which is a regulatory body who has regulated the shipping industry targets. It all started back in 1992, where we had the first protocol to conduct a CO2 reduction strategy for the reduction of shipping emissions. Since 1997, we had done 4 IMO greenhouse gas emission strategies. We have implemented various regulations like the EDI, the SEM, and in 2018, we had the initial IMO strategy on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. In 2023, we had the revised strategy on greenhouse gas emissions, which sets up the targets of the industry in meeting its decarbonization target. Sorry, yeah. Okay. Now, what are the targets that we have to meet? The first target is to review and strengthen the energy efficiency from ships. The second target is to reduce the CO2 emissions per transport work across all the international shipping by 40% by 2030. The third target is to increase and uptake the zero and greenhouse gas emission technologies and fuels by 5%, striving by 10% to 10% by 2030. The fourth target is to peak the greenhouse gas emissions and to reach the net zero by 2050. So, as I said before, we have 2 indicative checkpoints. The first one is that we have to reduce our annual greenhouse gas emissions by at least 20%, striving for 30% by 2030. And then we have to further reduce this 70%, striving for 80% by 2040. All the targets that we have set up for the shipping industry to decarbonize are based on a 2008 baseline. Now, if we see the historical greenhouse gas emission data of the shipping industry, starting from 2008, that is a baseline for our decarbonization. In 2008, we had 794 million metric tons of CO2. Then between 2012 to 2018, we had a fluctuation between 780 and 810 million tons of CO2. In 2020, we had the impact of the COVID pandemic, and we had a small reduction of 650 million tons of CO2. And between 2021 and 2023, we came back to the pre-COVID period with greenhouse gas emissions going to 680 and 700 million tons of CO2. and we estimate that this year we will have around 690 million tons of CO2. So this is what's happening on the regulatory side and what the IMO has done and what is the targets that we have to meet. Now, going back to where we stand now as an industry for the uptake of alternative fuels, what we see is we see an increase in ships with dual fuel capabilities when it comes to methanol and ammonia. Last year, we had a small drop on new builds on LNG and hydrogen orders. These are the main fuels that are currently discussed by the shipping industry to assist in the decarbonization path. Every potential alternative fuel has its own reduction, let's say, potentials, and they have their own challenges and barriers as we move forward on their implementation by the industry. The question now is whether this uptake of alternative fuels and based on these new builds and the current trade, we are going to meet the targets. And the first target that we have to see is the reduction of CO2 emissions per transport work at an average and cross-shipping industry by at least 40% by 2030 compared to the 2008 data. Based on our calculation that we have done on the projected carbon intensity and the current order book, as well as the estimated increase in the global trade that we're expecting to have, we think that this target is going to be challenging to be met. And the reason is the global fleet is expected to grow. We had around 708,000 ships in 2023. By 2030, we expect for this number to increase by 90,000 ships due to the rising demand in the global trade. At the same time, the increase in ships and the shipping activities will raise the fuel consumption unless we have a faster uptake of energy efficiency and fuel technologies that are going to be adopted by the industry. In respect of alternative fuels, we do see LNG, methanol, and ammonia being discussed. They are gaining momentum by the industry, but again, they only account about 1% of the global fleet's energy use by 2023. Even if we expect policy measures like the greenhouse gas pricing and the fuel standard that is going to be implemented hopefully by 2027, this is not going to have a real effect by 2030. In conclusion, we have a slow uptake of the alternative fuels and the growing size. The 40% reduction is going to be a challenge by the industry to be met. If we go to the third target, which is the increase and uptake of zero and near zero greenhouse gas emission technologies and the energy sources to represent 5, striving for 10% by 2030. Again, as the projected uptake of alternative fuels is taking place right now and the current order book, as well as the increase in the global trade, we feel that this target is a challenge to be met unless we have more adoption of energy efficiency technologies and acceleration of the near zero greenhouse gas emission fuels. Going on to the indicative checkpoints, we have 2 indicative checkpoints. The first one is the reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions by at least 20% by 2030. Again, based on the projected estimated greenhouse gas emissions that have been reported by the IMO at this MEPC and the current order book, as well as the increased trade, we are currently not on track in meeting this IMO target. And the same applies for the second indicative checkpoint, which is the reduction of 70, striving for 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions by the industry by 2040. Again, the IMO is relying very much on the uptake of alternative fuels to meet those targets. So projecting that around 100,000 ships will be operated by 2040 due to the increase of the global trade. We feel that this is going to be a very challenging target to be met. As I said before, the 2040 target relies heavily on the uptake of alternative fuels, which we do not see at the moment to have a scaling up of these fuels. And what is also very important, and it's also our role as a fuel supplier, is the infrastructure that we have not seen gaining momentum into the setup. Again, the implementation of midterm measures like the greenhouse gas pricing and the global fuel standard is expected to be implemented in 2027, but it's not going to be realized by 2040. So to achieve the 70 to 80% reduction by 2040 is going to be challenging based on the current trends. And of course, moving to the 2050 target, where we have the complete net zero greenhouse gas emissions around or close to 2050. This is also in line with the Paris Agreement, Article 2, that everyone already knows about it. Again, based on the estimated greenhouse gas emissions, the current order book, and the increase in global trade, we are currently not on track. We expect that by 2050, we will have an increase in the energy demand, and we have a very bad scenario of having an increase in the CO2 emissions by the shipping industry. Reaching net zero requires widespread adoption of zero greenhouse gas emission fuels, and at the same time, we need a significant progress when it comes to the infrastructure. What is very important to state, and I think it was stated before by the panelists as well, we see a significant progress in pilot projects. We have seen a lot of EU-funded projects, a lot of good ideas that have been put on the table or have been discussed or researched, but we haven't seen a real commercialization of these technologies by the industry. So to reach the net zero by 2050, it's possible only if we accelerate the zero greenhouse gas emission fuels, we have a robust regulatory framework, and we have significant investments in infrastructure. So news are not very good, but I'm optimistic, respectively, of what is currently the status of the decarbonization of the industry. I think what is the message we wanted to pass with this presentation is that we do have the targets in place. We do know what we have to achieve. We do know where we have to go. So now it's time for everyone, through forward thinking and ingenuity, work together to meet these targets. And I think this is a very important message for the people in the shipping industry to start working together and see how we can achieve these targets. And this means that generally we have to start conducting our feasibility studies, we have to start developing strategies to see how we can start investing in energy efficiency technologies, how we intend to uptake the alternative fuels, what are the options and what are the challenges. We have to further consider the optimization of ship design and retrofitting. What I said before about a lot of great ideas out there and a lot of technologies that they are still not on the full commercialization part. We do feel that carbon capture and storage can play a role on this, especially for the 2030 targets. We can utilize these technologies, and it's time to start discussing with ports and stakeholders how these will be done feasible. We have to embrace the digitalization. We said before, and the previous panel said, there is a lot of great digital tools out there. We have seen them, but again, the uptake by the industry is a bit slow. And of course, for the more brave ones, we can start investment in emerging innovative technologies. We have seen some examples, especially for short shipping, for the fuel cells and the batteries, that had some good results. Also, from our side, as marine fuel suppliers, we have an important role to play in this whole process. We do recognize that we have to start cooperating with stakeholders. We have to start updating our infrastructure. We have to start discussing how the supply chain of sustainable fuels is going to take place. We are in discussion with various stakeholders on this matter. And at the same time, we have to discuss with industry and regulators on the establishment of global fuel quality and safety standards. Our concern is safety, and we have a lot of questions to be answered. And of course, we never have to forget crew, because we have to also familiarize them and teach them how to handle and how to bunker these alternative fuels, which is still a big question. And of course, from the regulator side, it's time, we have to ensure that we have a global enforcement of emission regulations. We have seen that the European Union has established various regional regulations that are pushing the industry and the compliance complexities to another level. And also at the same time, they have to support innovation, and is what has been stated in the previous panel as well, that it's very important to have a communication between us and see how we can take this innovation to the market and for the industry to work together. Overall, the message here is that we have the targets, we know what we have to do, and it's time for everyone to start collaborating together. Thank you very much.